that Lynn Valancourt is on the Zoom meeting.
No problem. We are recording, Mary Beth.
Okay, so as I mentioned, Lynn Valancourt, our acting chair, is not able to make the meeting until 7 o'clock. We will not have a quorum without her because Mary Russo, a member of the commission, is unable to make tonight's meeting. So if we can go ahead and start the meeting at 7 o'clock, if everyone can tune back in at 7 o'clock, then Robin will be on the line with, or Lynn will be on the line with us, and then the meeting can begin with the full quorum.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
So Steve, we'll tune back in at 7 o'clock when Lynn's back, is able to connect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
It'll be 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, so that's it.
Well, can you tell if I'm on audio? The video is working, I on audio.
Lynn,
Oops.
Lynn, I can hear you. They just told us to come back at 7 when you were on.
Yes. I am, okay.
Are you there?
Hi, Lynn's here.
Okay, they told us to wait and come back at 7 for quorum when you were here.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right, I wasn't sure. Yeah, 6:55. I was trying to rush to get in. To get in, so I wasn't sure what was, because I didn't get the message on my I didn't get that message on my thing, because I had talked to Mary Beth McGrath just to let her know that I couldn't make it until I got back from work. So okay, I will wait till 7 o'clock.
Yep. People are starting to log back in.
Oh, there you are. Hi.
Lynn. So I think we're still waiting for Robin, and she said she'd be back on the line at 7.
Perfect. I'm just printing off the agenda here so I can go to where I usually have my meeting thing.
Hi, Jim.
How are we all doing to this evening?
Good, thanks. So we're still waiting for our member, Robin Torpy, to come on the line.
All righty.
Okay, it looks like Robin's trying to connect. Hi, Robin, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Mary Beth. Hi, everybody.
Okay, so Lynn,
Hi,
Robin's
Robin.
on the line.
Hi.
Okay, so Mary Beth, does it look like we have everybody joined that should be here?
Yes, you have you have the three members now, yourself, Crystal, and Robin.
Okay,
Mary Russo was unable to attend this evening.
okay. So the first, I'm going to then open the meeting for Commission on Disabilities for October 2nd. It is 7:02 p.m. in a Zoom meeting. And what I'd like to do first is to do an oral roll call. So Lynn Valencourt present.
Robin Torpy present.
Crystal Evans present.
Okay. And then
Okay.
other members or other guests that are here include Mary Beth McGrath. We have Christina Zaniti. Or do we have, who do we have? We have Jim Casey also online.
Yeah, Jim Casey, town clerk, is on the line.
Jim Casey, and is
Yeah.
Christina online?
She is, yes.
Okay, and I believe in the public, we have a Gregory Walsh online.
It looks like, let's see.
Yes, Greg
Yeah.
yes, he's here.
Okay. Okay.
And
So
you
the first item is, oh, and we also have Joanne.
Right, I'll mute
Okay.
I'll mute now.
Okay. So the first item is approval for the minutes of September 14th, 2020. Have people had time to review the minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
I-
Evans.
Okay, and second, all in favor for accepting minutes of the meeting from September 14?
I accept. Robin
I
Torpy.
accept Crystal Evans.
And I accept Lynn Valencourt. So we have three acceptance of the meeting. Motion passes. The next item that we have on the agenda is accessibility and voting polling. And for that, we have Jim Casey, who has come to talk with us concerning the polls and what's happening for the upcoming election. So welcome, Jim.
Well, thank you for having me. Is there anything in specifics that you want me to address, or do you want me to just give an overview of the upcoming?
Why don't we start with an overview? I understand that there's been some consolidation of the voting places. And then I also understand in the midst of the pandemic that we have changed some of the things that have been happening as far as the voting, or we've stepped up on certain things. So if you could give us an overview as to what's happening this year, and then we can get into any specifics that members might have a question about.
Okay, then. With the COVID virus pandemic before us, I knew that we were going to have at least two elections and possibly a third election this year. And with all of the social distance requirements, it was clear in my mind that it was basically impossible to manage 12 different polling locations to ensure that all of the social distancing was properly managed and the safety of the voters was at hand. And with that recommendation, I did a review of the 3 major schools, the Braintree High School, East Middle School, and South Middle School, to see how well they could accommodate multiple precincts within their buildings. And at the same time, ensure that we could manage the social distancing requirements mandated through the governor's office. And with that, I an extensive review and presented a report to the council members outlining the rationale behind why we needed to consolidate our precincts down to from 12 locations into 3, with 4 precincts within each location. Some of the setup was done intentionally of the way the makeup of our governments exists today. Not too many people realize that District 1 and 2 have a different ballot style than the remaining 8 districts. District 1 and 2 have a different Senate district, and I see a representative of Senator Timothy's office who represents District 1 and 2 with us this evening. And we also have a governor's council's race that is different. And on the other side, District 3 to 6, we have Senator Keenan, who represents the remaining parts of the town. Now, with that, it was imperative that we keep the District 1 and 2 precinct together. And fortunately, they were kind of close to Braintree High School, where we could effectively manage the COVID response, but at the same time to ensure that there were no mix-up of ballots by co-mingling precincts together. This East Middle School consisted of districts 3 and 4, which were again centered around that particular building. And then the final buildings, District 5 and 6, were more focused up at the South Middle School, where we established those particular precincts. And in doing that management, we were able to follow some specific guidelines, which are important. We assign a location to be a precinct. One, it has to be accessible, and it has to be accessible to all. And part of the accessibility through the election standards. Now, there are many ADA compliances that are required for a school building, but for elections, it's slightly different. It's less of a restriction in that the restrictions are is that we, as an election official, have to provide one access point that is ADA compliant to get into the building to access the voting area. The mission in the election division at the Secretary of State is to have that particular access point the same as all other voters. So everybody is entering the same building in the same locales. Each of the 3 buildings were already built in that fashion. They allowed ADA compliant ramps, access points, so we can clearly get into the voting areas. So we met that standard there. And then with that, the way the buildings were set up, it allowed us with an enormous amount of room to stack voters as they enter into the building to make sure that they are maintaining the social distances. One of my major concerns with our first election on September 1st was what was our success rate in meeting those standards. I talked to the director of the health department, Mary Beth, and asked her specifically what were the COVID experiences during the early voting, during the September 1st election. And she assured me that during that time period, that election did not contribute to any of the COVID related events that we've had in our community. Right now, the second election, September 26th, is only, it seemed like just a short period away. And still, I'm going to wait until the 14-day period over to find out how we did on our second way through it. We provide sanitizers at the beginning of the entry into the building for all the voters and as they exit the building. All of my election workers have masks on. They have protective shields in front of them. And each of them have a sanitizer to ensure that they themselves are sanitized at all times. What we do is we provide sanitized pens to all the voters when they come into the voting station to cast their ballots. And as we go through the day, we rotate out the used pens, re-sanitize them, and then we'll put them back into circulation after an appropriate time has passed. In addition, on an hourly basis, we sanitize all of the voting booths to ensure that they met any sanitizing standards that we needed to ensure to protect the health and welfare of all voters. And again, like I said, on September 1st, we seem to have met that standard. I believe that we're going to meet that standard for the past election on September 26th. And I feel comfortably that, and this is where things get a little sketchy, in that the voter turnout for the November 3rd election, townwide is going to be at 75% at a minimum. And typically we have at the September 26th election, we had a 28% turnout. And on the September 1st, we had a 39% turnout. So we're going to basically double the number of people coming into our voting precincts. And we need to manage that very comfortably. Now, one of the big things with this whole legislative change that Senator Timothy, Senator Keenan, Representative Cusack had voted on was adding some new elements into the voting process. And this impacted all of the cities and towns across the state. They introduced an added level for absentee voters to acquire an absentee ballot, that it added any COVID concerns. Before, that wasn't part of a way to get a ballot for absentee. That was added in. And the biggest thing that they added was the early vote by mail application process. On July 15th, the Secretary of State's office mailed to every single voter across the state an application to apply for an early vote by mail ballot. You as a voter had the options just of selecting the September 1st election, the option of selecting the November 3rd election, or you had an option of selecting all elections for the fall of 2020. In the first two elections, we had 6,000 plus people take advantage of an early vote by mail ballot. For the November 3rd election, we have processed right now 8,400 requests for an early vote by mail ballot. We would, and I just want to make it clear to anyone listening, we do not have the ballots as of this moment. They have not come in yet, but as soon as they come in, our plan is to mail them out within a 3-day period. So I ask everyone who's listening, do not go on the Secretary of State's website to track my ballot, because your ballot is not out there. It's not going to be out there for at least a few more days until we receive in our hands the ballots. A lot of the media that's going out with other communities hosting, saying that they have already made ballots available in their states. It does not apply to Massachusetts, which is starting to get our ballots in every community. Will make sure that they get out as quickly as possible. Now, for voters in Braintree, they have 5 options of how to vote on November 3rd. There are 2 vote by mail options that are in front of them. The first one is absentee. Certain registered voters can request an absentee ballot to be mailed to them by completing an absentee application themselves or having a member of their family complete the application for them. though there are some conditions to enable to get an absentee vote ballot. Those are, you have to be absent from the voter's town on election day. This doesn't mean you have to be in another city or a state. All you have to be is if you're at work and you cannot, if you do not feel that you can make it back to Braintree to vote, then you can apply for one using that standard to get one. Another one is if there's a disability. If you have a disability, you can apply for an absentee ballot and one will be mailed to you. Religious beliefs, if there are any religious beliefs in your faith that prohibit you to show up on that particular day for an election, you can apply for a ballot that way. And as I stated earlier, the next one is if you had any concern, no matter how small it is regarding the COVID pandemic, you can apply for an absentee ballot by mail. As of this moment, I checked the count before I left the office tonight. We have 484 people who have, voters who have asked for an absentee ballot by mail. Another option you have is the early vote by mail. Registered voters can request an early vote by mail ballot by completing an application. As I stated, nearly 9,000 Braintree voters have already requested one. They requested either by using that postcard that was mailed back in mid-July. There was a second postcard that was mailed in September. The person, they can fill out an application themselves, or the Secretary of State just launched about 2 weeks ago an online portal that allow you to request a early vote by mail ballot, and which we will be sending out to you if you did it that way. It's available on their website. And again, as I stated, that ballots are not available at this particular point. There are 3 other options that an individual can utilize to cast a ballot. And that is, again, these are in-person options that they have. And the first one, again, is absentee. Any registered voter can come into Braintree Town Hall, come to my office and request an absentee ballot to be cast at that moment. We have received this afternoon absentee ballots for that particular purpose. So starting tomorrow morning at 8:30, you can come into our office, you can fill out an application, you'll be given a ballot that you'll cast into the Cahill Auditorium, return the ballot to us, and that will be secured to be processed on election day for you. The next option is early vote in person, beginning September 17th and running for 14 consecutive days through Friday, October 30th. Registered voters can simply come into Braintree Town Hall beginning at 8:30 in the morning on each of those 14 days to cast a ballot. The schedule is as follows. On Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, it's 8:30 in the morning until 1:30 in the afternoon. On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, it's 8:30 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon. And then lastly, on Tuesdays, it's 8:30 in the morning, and Braintree Town Hall is open to extended hours, and you can cast a vote up until 7 p.m. Looking back at the first time we ever did voting in person for presidential election was back in November of 2016. It was for 11 days at that time, not the 14 days that is in front of the voters today. We had 7,000 voters walk into our doors, and we were able to process those individuals during that 11-day period with little or no lines. So it was a very smooth process. Today, I believe that when we look at this upcoming election, there are so many options out there. I think the in-person voting would be slightly less than what I observed back in November of 2016. And also, the last way you can cast a ballot is the old traditional way, on election day, okay? That's Tuesday, November 3rd. All voting centers will open at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they will close at 8 p.m. That's 13 hours of voting. It's a great opportunity to cast a ballot on that particular day. As with past elections held this month, voting will be held at one of the 3 voting centers across town, as I stated, Braintree Town Hall, East Middle School, and South Middle School. There is ample parking for all voters with added handicap parking located directly in front of the gymnasium entrances in each of the voting centers. So what we do is we have the required handicapped accessible parking in place for the school use. And then on election day, I add signage out in front of the school that would add additional handicap parking, and it's directly in front of the entrances to allow anyone with a handicapped accessibility issue to have close parking so they can get into the building very safely. Any questions?
Jim, just as a clarification, this is Lynn, clarification, I guess that there has been some questions concerning why there is a consolidation of the polling places when it's thought that that will increase the number of people in one polling place. And my understanding as of right now is that it's a combination of several things. One being that the additional requirements due to the pandemic required the point of travel to be, that they were the 3 main places that were able to have people come in from one place, out through another, did not cross each other, and still have handicapped accessible items. And also that we didn't have staff to be able to staff 12 different polling places. Could you explain a little bit of that? Because I think that that's a point of concern for some people.
Okay. When you think of it, it seemed to be counterintuitive that by adding more people into a building would be safer than having people dispersed into 12 locations. Okay, in the elementary schools that primarily are used for voting locations, St. Thomas More Church, the Braintree Yacht Club, those particular areas were very small. Okay, so what I'm doing is, though, I'm going to be putting a small amount of people in a smaller location. So essentially, there was very little pathway for voters to come in one way and go out a second way, where we were very restricted. By having, in the larger schools, one, we could put more people into a building. Actually, we could, in my opinion, I could put all 12 precincts at the Braintree High School and again maintain social distancing very successfully rather than split it up into 3. But the council felt that we should try the mini voting centers, the 3 individual ones. I support that decision that they made, and it's working very successfully. So that was very important that we did it that way there. For parking, when I take a look at some of the parking and access into some of the polling locations, yes, they met the ADA requirements as defined by the elections division. However, some of them were still challenging, not just for those with ADA compliance issues, but also with the elderly. Some of them, the stairs to get into those were very steep, and it caused a lot of anguish for people to get up and down the stairs, especially those that seemed like we're all developing some knee problems and so on and so forth, that they were challenging for the everyday person going into those particular precincts. So this made better sense. They were all flat. They were directly going into a particular area, provided plenty of parking, allowed us to maintain the social distancing, and gave a more, in my opinion, a more pleasant voting experience for all.
If I may, Chairman Valencourt, Mr. Casey, you may want to also emphasize that a significant factor was your staffing, that you simply did not, in light of COVID, you simply did not have the staffing that you've had in past years at previous polling locations.
Good point. Each election, I have 12 wardens. You know, my average election worker is roughly 76 years old. And my more experienced are typically wardens who are average age is close to 80. I lost 7 wardens for the both September elections. So I had to bring in some people, new people who haven't had that experience before and were kind of thrown into the fire pit. Now, if they were in 12 different locations, providing support to them on an ongoing basis as they went through the election day would have been impossible. I would have just have to hire and pay some more higher money to get more experienced people to come in, maybe for some other communities. However, by having 4 precincts together, I made sure that I had at least 2 experienced individuals assist these wardens throughout the days as they gained some confidence in themselves and gained some insight into how the precinct should be operated. And additionally, every election, again, as I stated, the average age is 76. Though I started out the morning at 4 o'clock when I woke up to go to town hall to prepare to ship out all the ballots, that I was expecting all of my workers to show up. As we get older, and I'm one of them, sometimes mornings you wake up and things don't work right. You tend to, let's say, feel a little sick. You got a little ache, pain here, your back is thrown out or something like that. I lost 5 individuals that morning. So now right away I'm short 5 workers in that precinct. It's not too easy to call somebody up at 4:30 in the morning and say, hey, wake up, they need you at 6 o'clock to be at the precinct. So by having the 4 precincts, I overstaffed my precincts with extra workers, though there was still less than what I normally had. So I was, again, having voting centers, I can move workers from one precinct to another by them just walking 5 feet to the next precinct, rather than driving halfway across town to get to that particular precinct. So there's a lot of efficiencies there that are very beneficial to the voter themselves.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yes.
This is Crystal.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the absentee early voting that you referenced that's starting tomorrow at 8:30, as well as the October 17th when you start doing the bigger early voting. Do you have the auto mark machine available at both times for voting, or is it only going to be available on election day or only for the early voting?
It is required by mass election law that an auto mark machine be available at all times in each precinct on election day. So we make those available during the voting centers. We have we set up 2 voting auto mark machines in the precinct, and on early voting, I set up 2 machines, and I have 9 other machines as backup, or 10 other machines as backup, because as Crystal, as you know, these machines are finicky.
Yep.
Actually, they're beyond their life cycle. Like their life cycle is like a young puppy, that it's about 10 to 15 years. And these machines are 16-year-old. They break down continually. Prior to each election, I certify all the machines, and they are working once I certify it and I seal the machine up to be shipped out. But more times than not, once it gets to the precinct and is set up, it fails. And then it requires me to call a service contractor to come in. Now, again, a benefit of the voting centers. I send out I have 3 voting centers, so I'm using just 6 machines. I have 6 spares. So if one goes down, I always have that immediate one there, and I can call for and have a replacement for that second one that went down. So it provides additional resources for us instead of delaying to get a serviceman to come in, which may be 2 to 3 hours, so they can make that repair. And generally, it's a simple repair. but some of these repairs are slightly beyond my capabilities. I do have a good knack of trying to figure out the problems, but a lot of them, they're old, they fall apart. And in addition, these machines, they weigh over 50 pounds. And again, I hate to keep saying it, my average electrical worker is 76 years old. The damn thing's heavy. I barely can pick them up myself, never mind asking two people who are slightly older than I to do the same. And it's hopefully that the state will, and this is something you could advocate for on my behalf, is to tell the state, replace the things. There are much smaller machines that are more efficient and easier to use than this monster. In its day, it was excellent. However, their day has come, and it's time to make a replacement for that machine. So advocate with your legislators. It's Kish, I can see you there. Get on to Senator Timilty and ask him to push to get some new Automark, some ADA accessible machines available for the voters across Massachusetts, especially in Braintree though. But again, there are new machines out there and they're more efficient. They're expensive though, and that's the thing. And the state needs to come up with the funds to purchase them.
Also, I emailed you earlier on the discussion of the Automark. I think this is the first time in a while you've presented to the Disability Commission. You told me a story when we were holding the Rev Up event around voter accessibility a couple of years ago of the education you did with local blind residents around using the Automark. Could you share that story?
Sure.
I think it's just good for the commission members and the public to hear.
When people come in to visit my office, sometimes I get a little talkative and discuss things with them. Because again, I'm a public servant. You don't want to just service people and act like a stone wall. You like to have some interactions. Because I think, again, I come from a background that is different. I only been in government for maybe 15 years in this position since 2014, but I came from a customer-focused company for 34 years before I retired from there. And part of the interactions with your customers is to talk about anything to make them feel warm as they come into your office, so they feel comfortable to ask for anything or inquire about certain things that may be bothering them. Most of the things that may not apply to my department, but we can guide them to the right place. So I had a gentleman just like that come in and start shooting the breeze with me. And actually I found out he came from my hometown, and he had a visual impairment, and he found out it was very difficult. He'd come in to vote absentee all the time on election day. And I said, hey, why don't you take advantage of the handicapped accessible visual aid machine that we have that will help you cast the ballot on your own. You won't need anyone there to assist you with that. He said he had no idea it was ever in existence. Now, the machine's already been 11 years old by that time, and it surprised me that he didn't do it. So he asked me if I could come down to the Elder Affairs department, because it's a group of residents who have visual impairments who meet on a regular basis. So I set it up with him. I dragged that 50-pound monster in my car and drove down there, set it up for them, and gave them an overview of this machine and how it worked. Then I set it up and I had them do some I brought some dead ballots with me, and I had them try it out to show them how it works. The machine has a button that enlarge the printing of the ballot to whatever level that you want. It also has the braille along all of the buttons and all of the directional machine parts of the machine to assist that voter. And additionally, it has a set of headphones to provide online instructions to the voter as they go through this process. So I believe there was close to 20 individuals who attended that meeting. Now, they all showed up on the first November 2016 early voting period. And that machine was used more during that 11-day period than those machines had been used in the 11 years prior to that. Typically, we have one, maybe two people townwide that take advantage of these machines. And it's, again, it's a useful tool. Actually, it's a 50-pound pencil because that's all it does. You touch on the touch screen what candidate or what question you want to mark, and then you hit print, and it fills in the little ovals for you. That's all it does. It fills in the ovals. And then you, as the voter, will take that ballot and bring it to the tabulator and cast it yourself. And it's a great little resource, and it's an excellent thing. And again, this fellow comes in, he only comes in though for in-person voting. I've never seen him on election day, but every time on election, early in-person voting, he comes over to see me and thanks me for demonstrating that for him. And I always tell him, if it wasn't for you telling me about it, nobody would know about it. So it's something that, again, through just a little conversation you can have with a person visiting your office, you can find more about them and find out about their needs and try to assist them as best you can. That's the story.
Yes, I love that story.
That's a great story.
I was also curious about the two absentee and early voting options. I know previously that absentee ballots, you had to have your own stamp. Is that still the case for this year? And is early voting stamped, or do you have to provide a stamp? I'm just thinking in terms of homebound people and stamp access.
Okay, on the September 1st election, the state provided the stamp to mail back the ballot.
For early voting?
No, for early voting, yes. For the early voting by mail, the state provided the stamp for the voter to return it back to them. Okay, I haven't seen how they did the envelope yet because I haven't received them. So I don't know if that's going to be part of it. If it's not, the voter would have to pay for it. But I just want to let you all know, and you can share it with anyone who follows you, is that all of these early vote by mail ballots for September 1st and the September 26th election, better than 3 out of 4 that were returned came into that drop box in the town hall parking lot. People still have a concern about placing that envelope in the mail and wondering if it will get to Braintree Town Hall. And I assure them the post office does a wonderful job. We have 2 wonderful postmen who visit Town Hall and take our mail. When we ship these things out, they're very helpful. They help carry them out to their trucks, and they get them immediately sent out for us. And the gentleman, I believe his name is Steve, he comes in every morning to deliver our mail. He has a grin on his face every morning when he has a big tray of ballots that he's giving to us, because he knows that his job has been done, that they are actively engaged in returning ballots as promptly as possible. They do a wonderful job, but we do have that ballot drop box at Braintree Town Hall parking lot, and it's along which I call Drop Box Alley. It's by the old water sewer building. It's the last box. You can tell it's red, white, and blue, very patriotic, and it says ballot drop box. So if you can see that, place your ballot there. We empty it 3 times a day. So your ballot's not sitting there for any length of time. We make sure that we're collecting them on a regular basis. And I can assure you, when you put your ballot in that box, or when a ballot is mailed back to us, it is cast for you. We don't hold them. We immediately begin the process period for that. Actually, that process has added a significant amount of time for my staff by keeping track of these. Because when you're getting in, and I'm looking for the November 3rd election, I'm looking at possibly having 22,000 ballots cast. My office is small, and we have a small safe, and to try the security for all of those ballots. It is overwhelming at times, but I have put into place a tracking mechanism that we can keep track of ballots we receive every day, and that we have them in the same location for everything. So on election day, when those have to be cast, they are done properly.
I had also asked for this agenda item around the need for people with disabilities in our community to be able to access transportation to get to the polls. I had asked for this to be added to the agenda a couple weeks ago, and over the weekend I found out information which actually poses a bigger voter disparity issue for low-income residents, seniors, and people with disabilities. The MBTA, without notifying the public first, eliminated 8 hours of daytime service on the 236 bus route, which happens to service 2 of the 3 polling places. It services East Middle School as well as Braintree High School, and would be a connection point for part of District 5 to connect from that area over to the 230 to get up towards South Middle School. I've been dealing with Senator Keenan and Tumulty's office and a couple of other state offices around this because it was done without public meetings, and there's other disparities around this. But it services several of the low-income housing areas in Braintree, and the majority of bus riders in Braintree are people with disabilities, seniors, low-income households, often people of color. I wasn't anticipating this when I asked for the agenda item, but one of the issues I wanted to explore was for those people who prefer in-person voting, whether it's early voting at town hall or whether it's trying to get to the polling place with the consolidation, is what options do we have for transportation of residents who don't drive in our community? I know Councillor Flaherty and Councillor Barica have both been exploring these issues as well, trying to figure out what options we have, and that was prior to realizing the bus route changes. But I know Councillor Flaherty is on the line. Is it possible for her to speak about what she found out when calling various town resources, or should I speak in regards to what she told me? Lynn?
I would, as the member that's bringing it up for it's really up to, I'm not quite sure what is the best option here. Your major question on this is what is the town, or does the town have any options for providing transportation to people to the polls?
Correct.
Okay.
Councillor Flaherty did research. Should I recap what she found, or should we let her speak where she is on the call?
As you know, why don't we have a counselor speak to that? I think the big thing to remember is that we need to have access for everyone to voting, and that with Jim outlining the 5 different ways that we have the option to do that the town has ensured being able to provide access. And that's primarily legally what the town needs to do, is to provide as much access for people with disabilities as people without disabilities. And in providing all of the early voting and the mail voting and the absentee voting, that is available to every voter within the town. So that, as far as providing actual transportation for people to vote, again, we can leave it to the counselor to let us know what she has found, but I don't know whether or not, and I would have to have somebody else speak to this. I don't know whether or not there's a legal obligation from the town to provide the transportation if they have provided equal access for everyone on the voting in the entire realm by providing those absentee ballots. Does that make sense?
My question around this, as it relates to disability, is particularly, I mean, there's some seniors who may not want to be doing voting by mail, but particularly people that may be using the AutoMark machine and needing physical access to the machine. Whether it's blind constituents or people with physical disabilities that prefer that, also given the voter consolidation. of bringing it down to 3 polling places. I know that, for instance, in South Braintree Square, we have a lot of non-drivers, the majority of which are also disabled, and we were moved from Braintree Town Hall out to South Middle School, 2 miles away, and it's off of a bus route. So I know that there's issues around that. Senior housing, such as the Marge Crispin housing, has to also commute much farther than they did. And again, if they want to vote in person or vote with the adaptive equipment available, getting there is more challenging than going to the Highlands. And that's where I'm kind of wondering, Julia's done some research. I should let her speak first.
Sure, okay. Welcome, Julia.
Well, thank you. I'm totally happy to share what I know. Most of my research is based on just talking to people and asking questions. Crystal raised this issue to me before we had the debt exclusion vote. And so the legwork that I did was focused on how to enable people, enable people to get to the debt exclusion vote. So in recognition of the fact that the reduction in the number of voting centers was going to impact people who were going to have difficulty getting there, we just thought about, well, how can we get people there? It's a very straightforward question. And the first idea was, well, okay, the elder affairs, the senior center, they have vehicles which are handicapped accessible, and maybe they would permit us to use those. We could somehow employ those vehicles on election day to get people to the polls. So I spoke to Sharmila Biswas, and she said that they run a pretty robust program already. And where she drew the line was she just was not going to open this program up for anybody younger than 60. That was the mandate of the Elder Affairs program, and that was who she was going to serve. And she was pretty firm on that. So then I thought, well, what about the Marge Crispin Center? Because they also have vehicles which are handicapped accessible. And I don't think that we're talking about huge numbers of people here, but I think we're talking about a minority whose needs need to be addressed. So I thought perhaps the Marge Crispin Center would have enough vehicles to be able to help manage this pretty smoothly. So I talked to Ann Toland about it, and she investigated, and her conclusion was that the Marge Crispin Center would have to pay higher insurance to do a job like that than what they're paying at present, and that was not something that they were able to do at this time. So I couldn't use, anybody who's over 60 should definitely know about the option of using the Elder Affairs program, because they'll take anybody. And they certainly have the kind of vehicles that you need to be able to do that. So that's in place. It's really a question of, what about people who are younger than 60? And then since the Marge Crispin Center isn't going to be of service, the next step I turned to was to talk to the people running the campaign. Now in Braintree, at the time, there was only a yes campaign, and that meant talking to Lisa Heeger. And Lisa said that she certainly would drive anybody who needed a ride to the polls. All they had to do was contact her. And I have not followed up to find out if anybody did, but I publicized that information to the best of my ability. And I hope that it was of service to somebody. The issue that I ran into with Lisa is that she doesn't have a vehicle which is in any way handicapped accessible. So I think, Crystal, this is where I leave it to you. You may have had a conversation with Lisa about this. So in thinking about the problem for the upcoming election, where I know the Elder Center will run their program and that piece is in place, and the Marge Crispin Center isn't going to be able to provide service in this regard, then the next group to look to is to try to coordinate with candidates. And it's hard, I think, in a presidential election to contact, the Biden or Trump campaign and say, hey, I need a ride to the polls so I can vote, because they may be offering that service, but that would take I think it's more likely that more local candidates are running more robust services. So there's a possibility that either Mark Cusack or Frank Collins, who are running for state rep, would be able to coordinate something. They would be somebody to contact. I have not done that research yet, but I think that might be the next step, unless somebody else can point out other vehicles in Braintree that we could potentially use that I have overlooked.
One of my thoughts around the issue with the Marge Crispin Center's insurance is it something where the Commission on Disabilities could pay for the insurance rider they need and to pay a driver for that day to have somebody available, especially now knowing that we have lost access to public transportation to polling places.
I think that that's worth finding out. Somebody needs to call Ann Toland, and I can give you her contact information. But it's something to investigate.
And our problem is we're in a time crunch because all of this happened within a month of the election. This is why I'm not sure what we can do, but I'm also. Yes, Robin?
I'm in the middle of a meeting right now. I'll call you back right after the meeting ends, okay? No. The meeting.
Okay. Oh.
Okay, sorry. One of my thoughts is, could the commission vote to set a budget available should there be a solution around this issue, because we don't have another meeting, I don't believe, until I think it's the night before the election.
This is one of the problems. This was not on the agenda to take a vote on.
Okay, well, the topic was on the agenda around voter.
The topic was on the agenda. I need to see if the commission can actually use the handicap parking funds legally for what you're requesting.
Okay.
And I'd have to run that through our town solicitor.
Okay.
I'd like to say something.
Okay, that all questions are through the chair.
Okay. Lynn,
Yes.
it's Joanne.
Yeah, do you have a question concerning the accessibility voting?
A comment primarily. I've got a couple of concerns. One is day of. I wasn't aware of the change in polling places for September 1st until the 31st of August. And I literally got that mailing on the 31st of August. Our mail has been coming late to my apartment complex. I don't know why, but there's a lot of people around here also who don't trust the mail, but that's one of the reasons, because we're not getting our mail in a timely way. But even though there'll be individual polling places to place the ballots, I'm concerned, first of all, I'm probably just going to vote ahead just because. I couldn't get to vote on the 1st because I couldn't change. I work on Tuesdays, and I had an appointment before I had to go to work, and I work on Tuesdays in Jamaica Plain, and it's like an hour and a half to get back on public transportation. So I would have had to, for safety's sake, go down to Montello and come back up to Pearl Street to go up to the school. Anyway, but there's going to be more people in lines waiting to go in because of the condensation of the places. That's one thing. The issue of the transportation that Crystal brought up about the 236, that goes by Skyline Drive, and I know there's a lot of poor people up there.
Yes, but I think to remember.
Please let me finish.
Yes.
The primary problem, what I'm hoping that somehow you guys can help with, is this is not widely known. I was in meetings 4 days ago, and they were talking about the possibility of dropping some routes or changing some routes, not doing it and not announcing it to the public. So this is not widely known. I was in meetings last Thursday. I had some, it has to, to do with what has to do with the settlement agreement from 2006. We're still working on it. And this is the kind of thing that is not supposed to happen. However, I think it would be a service to people in Braintree to let them know what you're counting on for transportation may not be there.
Exactly.
Okay, just as a thing, just to remind people of, the bus service on the 326 is a decision that the MBTA is making.
I realize
that. Commission as the commission as an advisory panel for the town of Braintree, we we have no say in as to whether or not the MBTA system needs to
Lynn?
consolidate or remove some things because of their finances. So
Lynn?
concerns on that need to be directed towards the MBTA, which Crystal, yes, you did in your email. And so the MBTA system is the
Lynn?
system that is deciding to remove those
I've been working
routes,
with the,
not
I've been working on and with
So I
things
just
at
want to
15.
bring up that as the Advisory Council for Commission on
And
Disabilities,
basically, I'm saying I'm not stupid.
we don't have the ability to stop the MBTA. So
I
I
know
understand
that, but I am not
I
stupid, Lynn.
understand the upsetness of this happening quickly, but the Commission on Disabilities has no say in that. What we are trying to take a look
Lynn,
at
I
is
know that you're beating a dead horse here. I am not an idiot. I'm not stupid. What I'm saying is, can you please let people know? I'm not saying, I know you can't do anything.
I don't know when the MBTA is doing this. How does the Commission on Disabilities get notified from the MBTA that they're deciding to take away routes?
You don't?
It's not the issue of the Commission on Disabilities we aren't in the chain of communication from the MBTA when they're deciding to drop.
I know that.
Okay. So
you're missing my point completely.
Then the point is?
The point is, it'd be nice to let people know there have been some changes that might affect your voting. Duh. I know you have nothing to do with the T or what the T does.
Okay. And Jim Casey doesn't necessarily get a notification from the T.
So if we've just heard this on anything.
Could I interrupt for just a minute? Lynn, I'm going to have to step away for a minute. I have a family emergency and I'll get back on as quickly as I can.
No problem. Thank you.
I know about the changes to the bus route.
So what we're taking, so I understand your concern as far as there has been that public transportation has been taken away, and we're trying to find alternate items regarding that.
No,
and we're trying
I'm not
to
even
figure
talking
out
about
ways to do that.
Well, I'm not, as a matter of fact, Crystal wasn't well, she was talking about alternate ways of letting people get through on that route. However, I'm not an idiot. I know you have nothing to do with it. I've been working with the T for 20 years.
Okay.
I'm not an idiot. That's insulting to me that you would think that I would think that you guys have something.
I didn't say those words, and what I'm not understanding when you say it would have been nice to let people know.
No, I
don't know who it is that you're referring to.
I didn't say would have. It's like I'm saying from here on, from now, like right now, it would be nice to let people know there are some changes might affect your voting. Duh. That's it.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
I think basically what Joanne is asking the commission to do is make sure the public is very aware of these changes, so they're not counting on bus service on election day and they have time to prepare in advance. If we have
nobody knows about this. And this will affect people's ability to vote. Nobody needs a surprise like I had on the 31st of August and no chance to change. But all I'm saying is that people need to know this might affect you. And it's already been published, even though they haven't set up anything as far as notice.
So let me ask, I'm not quite sure how this happens. How does the MBTA usually notify people that their routes are changed?
That's an easy one. What they're supposed to do, and it's supposed to be public notice. Hasn't happened. There's supposed to be a period of advertising. Basically, these changes will happen. You'll see them when they have work on elevators, and you'll see station signs. There's supposed to be notice that there are changes in schedules, and this has not happened. That being said, they didn't do the right thing. However, we've got voters to think about in this town.
Okay, so what can we do? Jim Casey, are you still on the line?
I'm still here.
Hi, Jim. So what I'm wondering is there any other way that we can let voters know in the town that public transportation has changed, and so accessibility to the items might be different? Do you have any ideas on that?
Again, it's our representatives need to be our advocates for that. But however, there was notice by the MBTA about a month or two ago that they will be changing routes. They weren't specific.
No, they said that on
routes they
Thursday
were
too.
changing.
But this
Yeah.
was in the future. They were supposed to be changing routes in the future, and nothing has been, and as I said, what is supposed to happen is a period of public comment. That didn't happen. It's still, whether or not the change has been made, not been any kind of public notice. So it's going to affect people here in Braintree.
Okay, so what we
Okay.
want to do moving forward from here is to figure out how we can let people in Braintree know that that has changed. And I think what I understand is that what Crystal has brought forward is that we're trying to figure out ways that people can access the polls or make it easier for people to access polls.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jim, is there any way that you know of that we might be able, well, I guess I would have to wait for, I'm not quite sure where in the government for Braintree that we can ask to have this notification put forth. Jim, if it has something to do with polling and it might affect accessibility for that, is there anything within the polling that we might be able to, or anything within your systems of notification for the public that we might be able to utilize?
Again, the town has a representative to the MBTA. and
Okay.
that liaison person should be the contact point.
Good.
And I'm trying to think, I believe the appointment is made by the mayor's office. And
Okay.
that person could be contacted to try to get some feedback from the MBTA regarding any changes en route. However, I want to point out, a month or two ago, I did hear that there were going to be changes. This was
I know.
through the media. It was
I
on
know.
TV stations that the MBTA announced on such and such a date that they will be reviewing routes that are non-performing routes that have a low ridership, and they will be making.
Been done before.
They will be making changes, and that it indicated in that media report, one of the broadcasters brought it up, that the MBTA would be having hearings on those changes.
And
I
they
heard
haven't done it.
on when those hearings were going to be in place. However, I'll admit to you, my focus is not on the MBTA and on what they're doing. My focus is
Okay.
making sure that every person, every registered voter has access to vote on election day.
Yeah.
And when I access to vote means that you have the ability to get into a polling location to cast a ballot. Never before in election management were the election officials responsible of getting voter A to a polling location in back. That was up to the voter themselves. Our responsibility is to get you access into that building. Now, again, I'm gonna age myself, and it was touched upon here. Always in my day, candidates always provided service for those who did not have a car. They may have
I'm
one.
from Jersey, I know that. I know that.
Cars in the families. Okay, those were the access points. My parents used it all the time when they had to go to vote. And I know many other people have done it. I know in Braintree, back in the early 1990s, the candidates who were running for some of the primary races would offer transportation to voters to and from the polls. However, where everybody has 15 cars in their driveway, the need of that tended to fall flat, and everybody could drive themselves to get to the polls. Now, with the 5 options available to voters,
It's great.
elections, everyone has an opportunity to get a ballot mailed to them, or they can
Mr. Casey,
to cast a ballot.
had I known before the 31st of August that my polling place had been changed, I would have been able to vote on the 1st. Or I could either have made a change in my morning schedule, or I could have sent for a ballot. But I was blindsided because I got the notice on the 31st of August.
Okay, Ms.
This is what I'm trying to say. It's not your job. It's not your job or the job of anybody in elections in any town to get person A to
Point B.
their polling
To the
place.
polling place.
Exactly.
Okay,
I
Ms.
mean, I
Feingold,
didn't get to my polling place because it moved 1.5 miles down the street,
okay,
and I
Ms.
didn't have
Feingold,
time to get there. It was a
Can I
matter of
address-
not having time.
can I address your question about notification about the change in the polling location?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, there was a plan in place that provided notification to all the registered voters in Braintree of the voting change. The first part of the voting change was the placement of signage in front of all of the impacted polling locations that said precinct 1A, 1B, 5A, which is town hall, your voting location has changed to this no location. At the new locations, there was a sign that said, welcome voters of district, I'm gonna use 5A since 5A was Braintree Town Hall. Welcome, up at South, welcome voters of 5A to your new polling locations. About a week before the September 1st election, Mayor Kokoris called every registered voter that had a 911 telephone number within that system that polling locations have changed. That was a mandate from the state legislation that was passed on July 31st. Okay, and I think 31st or the 29th, one of those 2 days. Then my office had timed with the mayor's communication a postcard to be dropped to every household that had at least one registered voter in it, notifying you that your polling location had changed. So the goal of this communication message was to give you a focal point at the street level. And when the mayor called, when the postcard was dropped a day or two later, that you would have reference points to all of these 3 messages that were coming at you of the changes.
The only message I got was the postcard, and I got it on the 31st.
Yeah, I know the name.
Nobody called me. Nobody called me.
Yeah, I know the 911 call came out because I got the call, and I
I
knew
never
it.
got it. I live in Braintree.
Yeah, but it was a 911 call that if your phone number is in that 911 system.
My phone number is a Waltham number. I've never lived in Waltham, but it is Waltham number.
Yeah, but if that is on your 911 record, that's the number that it's going to call. It's no different than if you were at home.
What's the 911 record?
Ms. Feingold, let me explain what the 911 system is for you, so that can help you out. Let's say you were at home.
Yep.
And you picked up your phone to call the police because of a medical emergency or for whatever reason, and you passed out and they couldn't communicate with you. This enhanced 911 system would know that you made that call and you live at XYZ address, and they could send an officer to that whole house to check on your well-being because it was a drop call. And that's what the system is. And the state legislators are aware of that because they're the ones who put in their legislation that it would be a requirement of a community that had changed their polling locations to communicate to the voters of that change. They did not require us to send a postcard. However, the town went to the added expense to make sure that we sent you another communication out of notifying you of that change. And now
I don't pass either of the schools. I don't pass Highland. I don't pass South. Basically,
I think what we need to focus on this, Joanne.
And I got no call.
Joanne, for a moment, what we need to focus on is the town can't be responsible for each individual of the town as far as if they have done their due diligence in providing notification, in visual notification, if they have provided the reverse 911 calls available to everyone in the town, and if they have provided a postcard that got sent to every address. From
Well,
this
I don't understand why I didn't get the call.
From this point moving forward, because the only election that we can try to fix now is the one that's coming up. From
Yeah,
this point moving
nobody should
forward,
have any
we all know,
surprises.
or it should be known in the town, that the polling places have been consolidated. We
Okay.
can't do anything now about what happened for September 1st or
Right.
September 26th, but what we can focus on is what are we doing for November 3rd? And I think that that's the only things that right now we can do to try to make sure that that we're focused on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so in taking a look at that, what we need to do is, again, the issue that's been brought up has been, is there anything that we can do to improve the accessibility for people for the November 3rd election that is coming? And Crystal, is that essentially what we're taking a look at for this question?
Yes, I think we need to make sure that residents are aware. Residents are aware of the bus changes. I think we should give it about a week or so, because I've got Senator Keenan and Senator Timilty's office looking at this issue to try to work with the T around this. I've requested directly with the Mass Department of Transportation Office of Civil Rights and system-wide accessibility at the T to reconsider to at least allow bus access on election day, hourly, reinstate the schedule, because we're very low on options for transportation by eliminating that bus route that services to and is a transfer point for the 3rd polling station for District 5, part of District 5. But I think that, I mean, I could touch base directly with Jim Casey in a week or so to see if we make any headway with the T, because I think this is a critical issue for voters to know that the bus will not be running unless we can get the T to agree to run the bus.
Okay.
And again, just pushing the issue with residents in many formats of communication about polling location changes, as Joanne has brought up, and figuring out what resources people do have if they need transportation, touching base with campaigns. I can ask around. I know, like Quincy, for instance, Rep. Ayers happens to own a handicapped van conversion company, and he always provides transportation to the polls there because they happen to have that resource. But I will keep looking around for options for Braintree residents. I don't know if there's anything else the commission has to offer, or funding if it requires paying anybody. And Mary Beth said she would look into that with a town solicitor.
Yeah, so as you know, use of the handicap parking funds, the commission brings forward an endorsement of a recommended expenditure, and then I bring it forward to the mayor's office. So if you want to do that this evening, then I would at least have that piece in place, and then I can connect with our town solicitor to see if that would be an option. So Crystal, your request would be to use handicap parking fine revenues for paying for a driver and insurance through the Marge Crispin Center for transportation.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean,
And you're looking for this, on a, for just the November 3rd date?
correct.
And that would be for the 13 hours available, or would it be for reduced hours?
I think we should just ask for a full day, because you never know if people have medical appointments and other.
But yeah, but a full day when you're hiring a driver might be considered 8 hours, but the full day of voting is considered 13 hours.
Exactly. I'm wondering if we can I would suggest to put $1,000 of our parking funds on the table to use this, and then negotiate later. It should be far less. I would expect to add a one-day insurance rider, as well as paying a driver. But I feel like that's overkill, but I think it's better to ask for more and just spend less.
Please understand, I don't know if this is even an option. I don't know what Ann Toland's, what the availability is for whomever she may have.
The other option, we'd have to look into this quickly. I could also work directly with Christina around this. Is there a private company that could be hired to pay for transportation, even if it's just individual requests? If it's a service that's being provided, it wouldn't be targeted to individuals, but you might only need 2 or 3 trips. I don't know what like local medical type transportation companies are out there that could provide a service should the March Christmas Center not be able to.
And perhaps I'm missing something here. And again, I think that this is a nice thing to be trying to do. But my understanding is that, as Jim said before, in the past, the town has never been responsible for providing the transportation for an individual to actually get to the polls. The town's responsibility legally is to provide an accessible place to be. So as
Correct.
far as the voting people having that would be, again, and I think that was just mentioned, that the town's requirements are to provide an accessible voting place and accessible voting for individuals. And my understanding is that we're trying to provide additional support for people in town now, hang on.
Okay.
Additional support for people in town. What are the criteria that we are providing for this transportation, or is this for any and all individuals under the age of 60 that don't have transportation? I'm just wondering what the criteria are that we're actually looking at.
I think the criteria should be, if the commission is paying for it, specifically people with disabilities, whether it's a wheelchair user, whether it's coordinating transportation for somebody with epilepsy who may not be able to drive, or other types of disabilities prohibiting their ability to drive. Seniors, well, seniors could fall into the senior center. So under 60 population would have other types of disability.
Right. I'm just wondering is because, again, we have to realize that if we're hiring a driver and we're getting the legal insurance for this, that we need to have parameters on this so that people know who we're providing it for. Otherwise, we're essentially providing a service for anyone in the town under the age of 60.
Okay, I think that a parameter in the way this could be advertised would be something such as we need to specify so people are aware about the bus restrictions, assuming we can't get this overturned. We do have a couple of weeks. I do have appropriate state level support looking at the issue around the T, because that issue was created by the T. Should we not be able to get that in place? We have to factor in that generally people can vote close in proximity to their own homes, because the consolidation, that creates a different hardship in this specific election for people with disabilities who cannot drive. We could advertise it as, if you are 60 plus and need transportation, to contact the Elder Affairs Department. If you are age 18 to 60 or 59, to contact, I think Christina would be the appropriate person to coordinate this as the ADA coordinator, so people know who to contact to arrange transportation. Yeah.
Well, again, we're not there yet. If you're
Right.
going to take an endorsement tonight, that I need to run this by legal, so I don't want to make any promises to anyone that this is actually going to be something that the commission can legally do.
Correct.
Right.
My one question is, given the circumstances and the proximity to the election, is it possible to hold a second commission meeting in 2 to 3 weeks to finalize details around this? Probably 2 weeks, just to give enough public notice. Should this be able to be done, just so it's a public meeting? Are we allowed to hold 2 meetings within a month in a circumstance such as this, basically?
Well, why don't I get the information first as to whether or not this is something that the commission can make an endorsement on that could be approved. And
Okay.
that would basically tell us whether or not there would be a need for another meeting.
Okay, yeah, exactly. But is
And I don't know the availability of the members, so.
correct. Is that a potential option, though, for us to hold a second meeting, a special meeting only pertaining to the election and voter accessibility in approximately 2 weeks from now.
Well, I'll
Yeah,
have,
I think that the commission can certainly meet more frequently if it's required for a particular issue. In the past, we have done things that were, I'm trying to think if we've ever done it in the past. I think that we have put something in place and then people have notified, I don't even know if we actually have done, but if we needed to, if we can move forward on that, and if we wanted to have another Zoom meeting, we probably could do something along those lines. And we would probably do the same type of thing if we had it again on another Monday evening at 7 o'clock or something along those lines. We could certainly do that if we have the availability of doing this type of item. I think that there are a lot of logistics to it that may become very difficult in trying to actually put this type of thing into practice, in getting an insurance policy for it and be able to hire somebody. I don't know, when you hire a driver and you know that you're going to be dealing with people that have a disability, I'm not quite sure if you have to hire a particular type of driver that's able to assist with any transfers. You certainly have to have somebody that if the place has tie downs, that can go ahead and handle the tie downs. And that's just not any driver. So I'm not quite sure what the legalities of that are or what the specifics of that are. So that would be something that would have to be gotten looked into to see if it's even possible for us to do this type of thing, given the time frame. So as Mary Beth has said, I believe that right now what we would probably need to do is to allocate a certain amount of money in order to be able to say if it is possible to do that, we can allocate this amount of money towards this right now. And I think that's where we're headed. Mary Beth, is that correct in what I'm summarizing?
sounds like that's what the commission's looking at. So if you're interested tonight you can endorse the proposed expenditure, which I think Crystal mentioned $1,000 towards using the handicap parking monies for paying for a driver and insurance. Right now,
So
pretty much.
out of curiosity though, if we're taking a look at insurance and people are looking for insurance for this transportation, who is taking out the insurance? Does that mean if there's an accident
That's a good question.
the Commission on Disabilities is the person who, the people that, does that mean that we, the commission, are the people that are responsible if something should happen? If somebody, there's going to have to be cleaning procedures, as there are now on all public transportations, cleaning procedures because of the pandemic. Does that mean that if somebody contracts a COVID infection after riding one of these buses and chooses to go ahead and say that it was because of the transportation provided to the voting, that the Commission on Disabilities or the town is legally liable for this? I mean, there's a lot of things to think of. I know that it's a really, we're trying to be as helpful as possible, but I don't know, given the legalities of the situation, will the town be willing to take on those liabilities? And as a volunteer commission for the town, that's an educational commission. I don't necessarily know that if it's not the town that does, or if we give the money, that the Commission on Disabilities would be liable for it. I personally don't feel comfortable having the Commission on Disabilities be liable for that type of item. Does that make sense?
That is precisely why I have to look into legalities of this.
What about the alternative idea, instead of involving having to pay for an insurance provider, what about if it was a private transportation company that services the local area, often used for like medical transportation, that already has their own insurance to be able to transport people like this, that we could contract for the day?
Well, but again, it's not the commission that's contracting it, it would be the town. So I need to look into legalities of that.
Okay.
And then you have to take a look at if we're providing that for if we're providing it for people that have disabilities, then why are we not providing it to other people whose car broke down? Or why are we not providing it? Because then you might start going down a slippery slope. If the town is providing it for one group, why are we not providing it for the rest of the town?
Statistically.
So that is, you know, that's another thing that we have to take a look at.
Okay, statistically, the majority of non-drivers is people with disabilities. Disability does not always mean a physical disability. It could be somebody with a learning disability that.
Absolutely, absolutely. All I'm saying is, if the town is providing this for a subgroup of the town, then we also have to look at why or how would they then have to provide it to the rest of the town if they're providing it to a subgroup?
In general, you're going to find people that are not physically disabled are going to have an easier time catching a ride with a neighbor. It's the people with.
And I understand that. All I'm saying is that when we take a look at the questions for the town, that's another thing that they're going to have to take a look at.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, while I support in trying to get information out and trying to be able to do these kinds of things for the town, and I think it's an important thing to bring up for the town, I think that there's a lot of questions that obviously have to get asked regarding the liabilities and all that stuff to see. And I think maybe hiring a private company might be a better option. It might lessen the liabilities, but that again brings up its own set of questions also that I certainly don't know all the questions, but it may not be as simple as what we're thinking.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. I lived in Somerville and they always had transportation floating senior housing to senior housing on election day as well. So, I mean, this is done in other communities. I know Quincy offers a lot of transportation. So it's not like we're the first town with this idea. We are actually a town that doesn't previously have this in place when many surrounding communities actually do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think that basically we have to wait for Mary Beth to do her research, talk to the town attorney and figure out what the legalities of this are. I would also encourage them to talk to other communities such as Quincy, because they do utilize transportation for voters who don't drive in Quincy. And I will, as I said, keep working on the MBTA issue because that would alleviate a lot of this burden.
Right. Right, and that was the email that was sent out to everybody, and that you had the MBTA and town officials and everybody.
I forwarded it to the commission members if you want to see what I sent to the state officials. I did copy in the town, the mayor, the ADA coordinator, the director of the senior center, and then who else? Jim Casey, just to make sure the town officials were aware of the change, but addressed it to the state officials because they're the ones that can do something about it. The town just needs to know that this changed for our voters. So, yeah.
So moving forward from this point, what's going to happen, Mary Beth, you're going to be checking in with the town on the legalities. You'll be emailing back to us to let us know what that status is. If it is that we can move forward on this, then we can decide to have another meeting at that point. To be able to make a decision regarding any other information that Crystal might be able to get regarding a private ability to hire and move forward from there. Robin, do you have any other comments / concerns?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Parks and Recreation, when they have a trip or when they had trips for the seniors and everything, who did they use for a bus system? They've transported people that are handicapped and everything. Would that be another thing to look at?
I don't necessarily think that would be the same. When they had those bus trips, they were actually using like the tourist buses, like the big long buses that happen to have a handicapped ramp that or handicap accessibility on them, but those were like the buses that handled 40 to 60 people in order to maximize or their bang for their buck kind of thing. I think the kind of transportation that we're taking a look at here, or people are talking about, is something more akin to the smaller handicap accessible vans that wouldn't necessarily be holding a lot of people at one time. Because I don't think that would be able to afford, we also have to take a look at the buses when you're transporting during the pandemic, how many people can you have per bus? And so
that's what I was thinking. Because of that, the social distancing, if you got 3 seats and 2 seats and 2 seats, you might only be able to put one person.
exactly.
So that might only 20 people instead of the 40.
It might significantly limit the number of people that you're able to transport and the amount of service that you would have to have. So that's,
because I know the Christmas Center, the vans that they have, they're limited. I think there's only 2, if I'm not mistaken. And Anna and sometimes the gentleman, I forget his name, are the only drivers that they have, and that's going to tax them if they have their social section the day of voting. They have the program for the seniors, so that might impact it and everything. And that's why I just thought maybe it's no harm, no foul to try to find out if Parks and Rec can help us out.
Yeah, I do know that they were the larger like tour buses kind of thing. So I don't necessarily think, because what they're doing is they're doing a large tour bus that goes from a pickup place to an event, and then from that event back to a pickup place. It's not really a bus that's like driving through town to pick people up at various houses and take them to the school and be doing that multiple times. So I don't necessarily think that bus would be an appropriate bus to utilize.
What about, Mary Beth could put this on the list of things to ask the town solicitor, but what about Braintree Public Schools buses? They do have accessible buses, and school is also closed on election day. If that's an option. I know we used them one year in the parade. We were able to get a driver to drive the parade float for the commission a couple years ago.
I don't know. My gut is telling me that they would be a little bit, it's the liability issue.
Right. No, but this is what Mary Beth put on a list of things to ask.
Yeah, just to check.
Yeah.
So that, Mary Beth, if that could be one of the things to ask. Again, I don't know what they would be willing or not willing to do due to the liabilities. If the town, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
what
I just
say.
think we could just put
I'll
on
inquire.
ask, and Mary Beth can find out.
I can inquire.
Okay.
Madam Chairwoman,
Okay.
Madam
So-
Chairwoman, before you close this, I just want to point out for everyone, do not let the opportunity to vote get into a way with finding a transportation to a polling location. You can go on the Secretary of State's website. It is sec.state.ma.us and then /election divisions, and go to submit a vote by mail application using their online portal. Okay, you can request a ballot. If your busing scenario works out, you just do not return that ballot. You can vote election day. But if you apply for a ballot by mail now, you will have it, you can cast it, you can send it in, and your vote will count. If you do not do anything, your vote does not count. So don't let this opportunity go by the boards. Submit an application using the online portal. You'll get mailed a ballot, then make your decision how you want to cast it at that point. Okay?
Jim,
Thank you very much, Jim. Point well taken.
Around the ballot box that you can drop ballots in, is it possible to get boxes to put at the senior housing, like on Roosevelt and over by Archie's, to increase access for voters there who are concerned about mailing?
There is some security issues that I have about placing a drop box in other remote areas of the community. One, The ballot box I got, it took me over a month to get that. It requires a different type of box, so only one ballot can be put into place at a time. We don't want people going in there, because you're not supposed to, someone cannot take a stack of ballots for a group and deposit them in that ballot box, nor can they return them to my office.
Okay.
Okay, the voter themselves or a family member are the only individuals who can return a ballot. So we're looking for the integrity of the election, and that's why we place it there. It's high visibility, it's well lit. If I start putting these things in remote locations, it, let me say, lessens security of the ballot.
That was my other thought around that. I just figured I would ask. And the final question is, I know a friend just did their early ballot out in the West. They said the envelope was thick when they had to submit it. My question is, in Massachusetts, do we have a thick envelope? Because USPS redesigned the mailboxes to prevent phishing out of mailboxes. It does clear those rollers, correct? Do you know yet?
The ballot envelope that we utilize now to mail out a ballot to a voter is the same ballot envelope they've been using for, as far as they've been mailing out ballots that I'm aware of. Okay, it meets all standards. It weighs, so the postage is at a 65-cent rate, so it's very small. And
Okay.
it can fit into any of the voting machinery.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I was just saying the new things, you can't put like a padded envelope in the new mailbox design for the US.
Yeah, no, because my ballot box is designed for a.
No, I'm asking about USPS mailboxes.
Yeah, I know the USPS mailboxes would allow for something of that thickness to go through the mailbox.
Okay, so people could just go to their corner mailbox and still mail their ballot without it being a thickness issue.
Yeah, thickness will not be an issue.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. So I think we've come up with an action plan regarding the polling places and what we're going to be doing from that point. I think what we're going to try to do is to move on to the other items that are on the agenda. Jim, I want to thank you very, very much for coming by. I know it's been a lot of questions, a lot of talking, and I really appreciate your taking the time to meet with us and to be able to clarify any of the issues that we had. So thank you so much for coming. And for everyone who's brought up issues regarding the accessibility and voting and polling, thank you all for your input. And we're going to be moving forward now with the rest of the agenda.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. Good night.
Okay, thank you, Jim. All right,
Thank
moving
you.
on. Updates, finances, Mary Beth McGrath.
Sure. So at the last meeting, Crystal had asked the question of finding out what previous revenues were so that there can be a comparison between previous years and the current year. I did reach out to our finance department, and I was only able to get up through the June 30th, the end of the fiscal year, fiscal 20. The town has been going through an audit, so they're still updating all of the revenue accounts, this being one of them. So I do have information July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019, which was fiscal 19, and fiscal 20, July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. So on July 1st, from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019, the revenues that were brought in were the balance in the account was $42,403.68. That's after the credits have been applied for fines and the debits of things that were purchased, that were endorsed by the commission and approved by the town and purchased. Fiscal 2020, the revenues from July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020, the balance in the revenues was $48,345.28. So that's taking into account the credits, which were $6,585 for what was brought in, and the debits of $643.40. So the difference or the increase between the increase between fiscal 19 to fiscal 20 was $5,941.60 in that account, because on the year-end report for revenues in fiscal 19, which was June 30, 2019, the revenue balance was $42,403.68. On June 30th, 2020, the balance in that account was $48,345.28, with an increase showing of $5,941.60. Now, I can tell you, I don't know what's been credited to that account at this point from July 1st to present, because I don't have the updated revenues from the finance department. But I can tell you the debits that have been applied to the account are $140.79. And those were for the sensory kit materials that Mr. Millette has been working on and had been working on. So if you subtract that from the balance, it would bring us at $48,204.49. Again, I don't know what credits there are to the account yet, because I don't know, that hasn't been updated through the accounting and finance department. So I would say approximately there's around $48,204, give or take. Once credits are applied, I would likely suggest that there'd be more between July 1st and present on whatever was brought into the town through fines.
Okay. All right. Do any members have any comments or questions regarding that?
Can we just get a written, could you send us that document just in our emails when you have a minute, just so we have
So my notes,
yeah, just with the totals.
I'll put it together in an email. It's all scribbled now on my piece of
Oh,
paper.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The next item, Sunset Lake fencing / traffic concerns with Christina.
Yeah, sure. The last meeting that we had, some members had asked about any accident information at Sunset Lake. I spoke to Deputy Cahoon, I believe, is it Deputy? And he...
You there, Christina?
You muted.
Looks like you're muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I got some information regarding any traffic incidents at Sunset Lake that some of the members had asked at the last meeting. I spoke to Deputy Cahoon, and in the last 5 years, there were 5 total accidents. 4 of them, however, were out on Safford Street and Route 37, and there was only 1 accident inside the Sunset Lake parking lot, and that was on June 14th of this year. The accident took place at 12:30 a.m. and it was 20 to 25 young adults from out of town in the parking lot. One vehicle hit another one, and they didn't have the exact circumstances because both drivers fled. No children were involved at that time.
So 12:30 in the morning?
Yeah, so I would
As in just
assume that
before
they
1
were
a.m.
partying.
Okay.
Yeah, so yes, and the other 4 accidents, Officer Cahoon said, were out on Safford / Route 37. So it wasn't within the parking lot. And then I reached out to Parks and Rec, and we were thinking about, you know, pathways to the park that you had all mentioned at the last meeting. So they said for a stone dust material pathway, it would be $30 per square foot. I spoke with DPW to kind of get an estimate regarding size of the path. I spoke with Ben, and what am I looking at? Okay, so we were talking about a quick measurement on a map. It would be about 60 feet from the parking lot to the first fiber area with swings, and then to the second larger area. It would also be from the parking lot where the current ramp is all the way to the other pavement over by the Bema and the back.
Christina, 60 feet or 60 square feet?
I think it's probably 60 square feet, sorry.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not big.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
And then the other one over by Beamer and the back gate, along with one whole side of the fiber area, would be about 170 square feet. So with the 60 square feet, that would be about $1,800 for that stone dust path. And for the 170 square foot route, that would be about $5,100 for that path.
So I just wanted to jump on Christina's comments. At the last meeting, Lynn, you had made a suggestion, and I know other members did as well, that probably the best way to proceed with the concerns about the playground at Sunset Lake was to first start with making it accessible as far as a pathway. So that's why Christina looked into what the costs would be associated with that, to kind of maybe having that as a starting point for your project. I know that fencing was the one thing that was the item on the table, but making it accessible is probably the larger point right now. So we thought, let's go ahead and get you some estimates on what it could potentially cost for an accessible path to that playground as a first starting point.
Currently, there's no curb cut on the backside near the BEMA building. The only curb cut is a pseudo curb cut coming from the parking lot area, the main parking, and that would be the shorter path.
Okay, I mean, I'm sure that could all be taken into consideration if we were going to construct an accessible path. I would assume that we would do it properly.
We should also have an accessible parking spot closer to the playground. The only accessible parking currently there is right in front of the sand near the gazebo.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
That's paint. That's not an extremely expensive thing for the commission to fund.
Well, I think that these are just estimates to be able to see, you know, what would it cost to actually make the item to start to be accessible. The other question that I would have is that, is stone dust the actual type of surface that we would want to have? Is there another type of surface that might be better? And if we do stone dust, is there some type of maintenance that has to occur with that? Whereas there might be another surface that's a little bit more expensive, but doesn't require as much maintenance. So that would be.
So we started with stone dust because that's something that the DPW is familiar with using in other locations. And we wanted some guidance from the commission as to if you wanted us to proceed to get additional types of materials that could be used and like the surface types.
I do have one other suggestion around this. When they redid Hollingsworth, they put in artificial turf, which counts as an accessible surface. The wood chips that are there will sink a wheelchair. I would not call that an accessible surface. It's also hard for people with leg braces to walk, which often includes children with disabilities. It is at the lake in a grassy area, and I'm wondering if we could also get quotes on turf under the playground, because we would still be creating a path to a surface that's not accessible for many types of disability. Do you know what I'm saying?
No. I'm a little lost. We're looking right now, we've got carte blanche right now, because we're saying, hey, we want to try to make some accessible paths into this playground. What kinds of surfaces would we like to go with? And Mary Beth and Christina have asked about stone dust, because that's like something that's been done before. And the question that we're asking for all of our members, Robin, you also, is there another surface that would like to get a rough estimate on, so that we then have some numbers to compare and then can decide what do we think would be the best surface to include?
There's concrete, there's asphalt, there's rubber, which is going to be more expensive and require more maintenance, and the stone dust as a path option. I, as a wheelchair user, will say that the asphalt paths at Charlotte Rose Playground that goes around the tennis court and down the backside of the property, it does not always come in even with the grass. It's a raised surface. I think the stone dust might actually be a better idea from the standpoint of it blending into the surrounding grass.
Right, and not having a lip on the edge.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
asphalt and concrete will create that. Rubber surfacing in the summer can get damaged. So if it's just a pathway, rubber is extremely expensive. I think in the interest of a pathway, the stone dust is probably the most cost-effective option and most accessible without creating a tripping hazard along the edges.
Okay,
Whatever
and then, oh, go ahead, Robin.
I'm sorry, whatever is the safest method, Crystal, you know best because you're in the chair. Between me and Lynn, I can only say with a cane or a walker, but you know with the chair, whatever you feel is the safest, what would be the most cost effective. But we have to look for, I think, safety first.
I think, okay, what's the playground on Old Washington? You know where I'm talking about, Mary Beth? It's Old Washington behind the houses.
Is that the one just past Cielo?
Yes.
I don't know the name of that playground.
Okay, I forget it, off the Dyer Hill.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
That has stone dust road from the street back to the playground, and I think it's considered, I would call it accessible. The same as Eaton Pond, I believe they have stone dust out there on those trails, which again, like I've seen them used on National Park Service and
Now, does that stone dust require repacking or redusting so many years? Because if we decide that that's a kind of surface that we want to consider, then what we would probably have to do, if there is a maintenance issue along with it, is also budget for the maintenance for that along with getting it.
Yeah, I think any surface you're looking at requires maintenance at some point along the process.
Okay.
I would
So the
say
question,
this
I
is the
guess,
same.
the question, I guess, for the Commission on Disability members is, do we want to try to go with just a little bit more, taking a look at the design using the stone dust, or do we want to consider another surface, or just go with stone dust and then try to figure out what do we want to make accessible where and what kind of curb cuts do we want to have?
My thought as a wheelchair user and a parent who frequents playgrounds would be stone dust path leading up to the playground would be good. The playground surfacing itself is still an access barrier. Like I had mentioned.
Right, but I think when we think about what is going to be in the playground, that we might be able to think of what's going to be under the structures, et cetera, when we think of the next phase, which is making the actual things in the playground more accessible.
I think we need to start from the structure and work up. The ground under it. I would suggest what they did at Hollingsworth was the artificial turf, which has some sort of cushioning that they use as a safety for playgrounds. I would be interested in quotes on that, but to cut down turf costs, I believe turf might cost more than the stone path. We could use turf with paths between equipment as well. Does that make
The
sense?
only thing I have a question about with using the turf is that I know that the padding they use with the turf is pebbled or pelleted rubber, and the rubber is often a recycled tire rubber, and they have concerns over whether or not that is carcinogenic when it's exposed to young children. So I probably would not go with any type of turf that's using that type of padding with it, and I do know that that's one of the concerns that you do when you're at like the high school turf field. That's what's down there, and then a year later after they went, oh my God, that's a concern, and now it's there. And then you still have to replenish the padding under a turf every so many years because the little pellets get kicked off everywhere. And I do get concerned when we had the track club and I was with all the young kids on the track club, their favorite thing was to sit down on the ground and see if they could pick up the little pellets and eat them. So I have a hard time. Yeah, they do. They dig in there and they find the little black pellets and they think it's so cool. But I have a problem with making a playground that's going to have any kind of padding that has that type of potential.
That makes sense. I was just thinking because it has been used in Braintree recently on one of the newest playgrounds. What most accessible ADA compliant playground surfacing is the actual poured rubber playgrounds. That is heavily used through Boston, Somerville. I know Quincy just put it in their inclusive playground, and we have it as walkways at the Highlands playground. That is
So if we,
ideal surfacing for accessibility.
yeah, so if we use, though, a stone dust for right now for getting into the playground and around the playground, that doesn't necessarily preclude using some type of rubberized or some other type of service within the playground when we look at the playground itself.
Correct.
If we're doing it in phases.
Correct.
Okay.
So
do we?
can I ask the commission a question?
Yep.
Are you looking at considering using or endorsing the use of funds to, one, provide a newer surface under the equipment, and then also the pathway? Because that's going to better give us an understanding as to which way we're going with this.
Right.
And what we need to bring back to the commission.
Yeah, I would advocate that if we're going to be trying to put any other new or put a new piece of equipment in there to make it more accessible for the people using it, that we would have to consider the surface underneath that also and consider surfacing within the playground itself.
Right.
But that will affect, I mean, that may run an awful lot of money if we're trying to, that's why I was saying in phasing, because it's going to end up, if we do a path and we do equipment and we do a surface and then we say, ooh, a fence, that might very well use up the entire budget that we have in the commission. And I don't necessarily think that we should use up all of it at once doing that.
Right.
I did bring up the issue of grants and sent some links to some organizations and websites that have grant resources, because I'm like, if we can kind of formulate a plan, perhaps applying for some grants to improve access and then filling in the gaps might be the way to go here.
Christina's been looking at many different types of grants and what might be available, but we also wanted to bring forward the information that we were able to get on, that she was able to get from the DPW on what the cost could be for stone dust pathway.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's something we should just keep looking at is grants. Quincy just did their inclusive playground a couple of years ago. Maybe find out what if there were local resources that they utilized for that playground improvement. That might be just where they're in a budding town. There might be South Shore specific resources versus national.
Do you want to take point on that and be able to reach out to them to find out?
Yeah, I can start doing work around that. I mean, I'm going to prioritize this MBTA bus crisis.
There you go. I would think that. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
But this will be the second priority. But I mean, some of the conversations I'm having around that, I can also bring this up when dealing with the playground as well.
So I think what I'm hearing is that we want to probably go with the stone dust as far as making an accessible path to and through the actual playground, and that will give us the most flexibility with being able to integrate that with anything else that might come up down the road. But in taking a look at a phased approach, that the stone dust path and then fixing the curb cut would probably be the first item that we would try to concern. Is that a general consensus from Robin and from Crystal?
Yes.
And what do you think, Robin?
Robin?
I think we might have lost Robin.
Oh, there she is.
There we go.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What was the question?
I just wanted to see, we're thinking of making, thinking that the stone dust path with a curb cut would probably be the most effective way to be able to go do a phased approach for accessibility to the playground, and then being able to integrate that with any future things that we do with the playground. And I wanted to see if you agreed with that assessment.
I agree. As long as everybody feels it's safe, it's non-toxic, and it'll work,
There you
it's fine
go.
with me. I'm easy.
Okay, great. So from here, would we be able to, so Mary Beth, moving forward from here, as far as taking a look at anything else that we would want to do with that path, would we go ahead and take a look at a drawing just to see where we're looking for a curb cut and what we're doing as far as a path?
Yeah, so Christina and I had talked about this, and we thought the next logical step would be, based on tonight's conversation, is connect with DPW, the town engineer, Nelson Chin, and Chris Griffin, Mr. Arsenal, and see exactly what kind of a layout they can offer.
Okay, that sounds great.
Also a question for, I think it's Mary Beth and Christina that would check into this, but I can make calls. Community preservation funds. Is that anything in Braintree that they would be able to also help contribute towards improvements around the playground at Sunset Lake?
I could not answer that at all. I'm not at all familiar with what the process is for community preservation. We can look into that, though.
Reach out to Melissa about?
No, we can look into that.
Okay. I'm just wondering if there's like certain details that they could help with, certain details that we could get grants or.
Yeah, they have 4 different criteria that they have to go to.
Yeah.
It has to be historical. It has to be like, there's some very specific things that they can do and that they can't do. So I'm sure that Mary Beth would be able to find that out easily since they're located.
They have some green space funding, correct?
I don't know.
That's the department, I believe that's the department that green space funding falls under.
I'll get that information.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Next item, informational. Christina, the Massachusetts Office on Disability Grant.
I applied for it. I sent it in last week. I had our grants writer check it over. We're still applying for a planning grant to help with the transition plan because it hasn't been adopted yet or completed yet. So that's it. And then I just wanted to give you an update. This wasn't on the agenda on the Shared Streets grant. They've started the work. I talked to our town engineer. They started work over at Flaherty last week. Hollis started today. Engineering was notified very late on Friday that the company was going to come out to Hollis this morning and start this morning. So they're going to get letters out to the residents around Hollis. But then I emailed Andrew Marin, who works for Braintree Public Schools, and suggested, once we get information of when work's going to be done around the schools, can we send them information so they could put it up on their website? He said, he gave us the go ahead to send them stuff and they would look it over, and he probably has to run it by the superintendent, but he thought it was a good idea. And then work around at South will start sometime this week. And right now they're just doing excavating and prepping, and that the traffic equipment and the signs, the crosswalk signals, all that stuff, it does take a little bit of lead time, but they have that time where they're only in the very beginning part of this project. And John, who is the town engineer, did send me like quick sketches of what work will be done. So I think that will be something nice to provide to Andrew to maybe put on, again, if he approves it, and the superintendent and everybody else who he has to ask. It might be a nice thing to have up on the school website as well. So residents and parents and families can see what work will be done.
Okay.
And that's
Thank
it.
you. Okay. The last item that we have on the agenda is any other matters that the chairperson did not reasonably anticipate at the time. Robin, do you have any other issues to bring up?
No, I think we've covered about everything.
Okay. And Crystal, do you have any other items to bring up?
I do have a question. Gregory Walsh is still on, and he has voiced interest in joining the Commission on Disabilities and wants to know what the process is for him to become a member.
So it's my understanding through the mayor's office, that's all handled through the mayor and the mayor's office, that he did receive Mr. Walsh's request and he's taking it under advisement. That's about all I can tell you at this point. I don't have anything to do with that process.
Exactly.
So it was received through the mayor's office and I was told that it is the mayor's taking it under advisement.
Okay.
Well, Gregory, I hope that it all works out and that we hear soon. I know in the past that we have done, I guess that there's a swearing in, or and they take a look at the number of people on the commission, and there used to be a swearing in twice a year. So I don't know when or how. I'm not sure if Mr. Kokoris actually has done any of that before. So if there is any delay in answering back, it may be that he's just checking to see what the actual procedures go with. So hopefully all goes well, and hopefully we'll be able to have you on the commission soon. So that would be wonderful. Okay. Any other issues from people on the commission?
Nope.
No? Okay. In that case, because it is now 9:05 in the evening, I'm actually not going to be asking for any public comment right now. And I'm going to be going ahead and closing, or if I can have a motion for closing the Commission on Disability this evening.
I make a motion to close the meeting at 9:05 p.m. This is Robin
Okay.
Torpey.
And can I, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. And can I have a second for that?
I will second that.
Okay, and so all in favor, we have to take a roll call. Lynn says yes.
Crystal.
Robin says yes.
Okay, and Crystal says yes.
All right, thank you, everybody.